All right, so Kyle Kulinski has released his video responding to Spotify taking down one of his 5 episodes on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. Now, it's titled Kyle Censored by Spotify 2018 Rogan Appearance Pulled. And so, we're going to be talking about here is we're going to talk about the crux of what we're going to talk about here is just his explanation for why exactly he was taken down. In the first place, the title saying Kyle censored by Spotify. This is actually really heavily in question right now because it actually doesn't seem like it was Spotify that actually pulled it down. It appears that it was actually Joe Rogan. But we're also going to talk about how Kyle's own fans seem to be really criticizing him for this take. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to play for you an important clip where he kind of breaks his situation down and his theory as to why it is that Spotify pulled down one of his episodes on the Joe Rogan Experience. So go ahead and check this out.
And nobody's coming to crack down on him for his addiction, so it's so hypocritical for him to go after other people for their addiction. Now, I guess you can make a stretch of an argument that they say, oh, this is like fat shaming, and we don't allow that on here, so we're going to get rid of that. Maybe that's it, but I think we figured it out. I think in my conversations with Crystal and reading as much as we could about this, we cracked the code and we figured it out. There's a section where we talk about the murder of Jamal Khashoggi, and I give all the relevant details about it that were in the news at the time. And then I really go in hard after Saudi Arabia. And, I mean, I just talk about how they're doing a genocide in Yemen, and they're bombing mosques and open-air markets, and, massacring civilians, and blockading the country, and not allowing food in, and there's starvation, there's famine, there's a cholera epidemic, they're not allowing medicine in, so I really go in hard after Saudi Arabia. And then come to find out, it was just reported by Reuters and the New York Post that very recently, Spotify made a deal to expand into Saudi Arabia. It's the beginning of podcasting in Saudi Arabia where they're allowing it. They expanded into Egypt, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. Now, I don't know if you guys know about how these things work internationally, but you don't just go into a country like Saudi Arabia willy-nilly and free of your own volition and say, we want to have our platform there. No, you need approval, son. You need approval from the Saudi government in order to get your product in Saudi Arabia because it's an authoritarian theocracy. And so, without a doubt, there's no doubt that Spotify had conversations with the Saudi government. And I also have no doubt that Saudi Arabia had terms for the deal. Hey, you want to come in here? That's fine. Here are the ground rules. Here's some things that are no-go zones that we don't like being talked about if you're going to be allowed in this country. There's really no criticism, certainly no vociferous criticism of our government if your platform is going to come in here. Now, look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it happened to align with the expansion into Saudi Arabia, and the podcast where I criticize Saudi Arabia viciously gets pulled down. Maybe it was a mistake and my podcast was accidentally pulled down and it wasn't supposed to be pulled down. Maybe eventually it'll be brought back up. I don't know. But we're not getting any answers. And Spotify needs to release a statement on this and explain why my podcast and Duncan Trussell and Bill Burr and TJ Kirk and a bunch of lefties were banned. It's not because he said racial slurs in the episode. He didn't say any racial slurs in the episode. There's a transcript of the podcast. Now, admittedly, it's a bad transcript because it's like AI generated and it's like a lot of stuff is off. But I know for sure there was no use of any racial slurs. I was there. And I think I would remember such a thing. So, but there's another angle to this too, which is there's some reporting now that perhaps during this firestorm, it was Rogan who gave the green light to Spotify. Like, okay, look, if you got to pull some podcasts down, you go ahead and pull some podcasts down. Because he's been going through it. I mean, the entire world has turned on him and the media's been going after him relentlessly. And so in the midst of that, it's possible Spotify went to him and they had conversations about the things he said and whatnot. And they said, look, to protect you, we need to, take down maybe some of the podcasts where stuff went a little too far. And we don't want to do it, but it's something that we kind of have to do, or else they're going to keep coming after you. And so we really want to do this to protect you. And it's conceivable. Again, some reporting says Joe was like, okay, if you got to do it, you got to do it. But again, who came up with that list? How was that list derived? Who made the decisions? And how the hell did we get on that list? I think I know the answer because I just laid it out for you in detail, but look, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. I want somebody to.
So
lay it
as
out
you
there
can
for me.
see there, he's reiterating what he previously said on Twitter, which is that the reason why it got pulled was most likely because of his harsh criticism of Saudi Arabia and his talk about the Jamal Khashoggi situation. And he's saying that this is the only thing that makes sense because for him it was I guess he looked through the different ideas. He brought up a bunch of hypotheses and he went through them. And I guess this is the one that he came down to. And I guess for him, the evidence that they're moving to Saudi Arabia is evidence of this. Now, again, I have to repeat that it's not common for this kind of thing. You don't have platforms pulling this kind of content from its overall platform. So like I said in my last video, it is common for Netflix to remove Hassan Minhaj's episode shitting on Saudi Arabia in Netflix Saudi Arabia, but they're not going to remove that in Netflix everywhere else. They're just going to remove that in Netflix Saudi Arabia. So if this were to happen, it would only really be removed from Spotify Saudi Arabia. I highly doubt that Spotify would remove that for its entire platform. That doesn't really make sense. But also, even if that did happen, that would mean that Joe Rogan must have, he must have signed off on it to at least some extent. So you'd have to at least bring him up in this situation as well, because at the worst, he wouldn't have protested in any way. But what it appears to be the case instead is it was actually Joe himself that took this down. And so this is a message from Spotify CEO. This one says, I think it's important you're aware that we've had conversations with Joe and his team about some of the content in his show, including his history of using some racially insensitive language. Following these discussions and his own reflections, he chose to remove a number of episodes from Spotify. He also issued his own apology over the weekend. So, based on this comment from Spotify CEO to the workforce over at Spotify, it was actually Joe Rogan himself that decided to take down the episodes. So what this tells us is Joe Rogan took down the episode. So it was not Spotify that took down the episode, but it was actually Joe Rogan himself. And so you can see in the video there, Kyle kind of brings this up as a possibility kind of thing, but he seems to be very, very convinced about the Saudi Arabia situation, which I find to be really surprising personally that he would believe that with such little evidence as a coincidental move into Saudi Arabia, especially, to reiterate, it's very abnormal and uncommon for a platform to just remove an episode from entire platform wide rather than just a platform in that specific country. I don't know how you don't, look this up. Also, another thing this tells me is how close are Kyle and Joe if Kyle isn't just sending him a text and saying, why was my episode taken down? Because he could have done that, right, to figure this kind of thing out. Or, maybe he did, but it doesn't appear that he did in the video and the way that he's explaining the situation. So, how close even are Kyle and Rogan, right? I think it's a very, poignant question in this situation. And so, as you guys know, the real reason why this video was taken down, and I guess there's even video footage that has now been pulled up of this, Joe Rogan actually, he uses the N-word with the soft A at the end in his quoting of a Kanye West lyric called, from his song called FML. It's with The Weeknd. It's on The Life of Pablo. It's a decent song. And so he quotes that. And so obviously with all of the racial slur controversy going on, with all of the different, usage of the N-word coming out of his previous usage, it makes sense why he would remove the episodes that have the mention of those words, right? And so clearly what has happened is he pulled it himself because it has that word in it. That's the reason why he removed it. And so he does say in the video, I think, to give himself some leeway, hey, if I'm wrong, but this is what I think. I think it's a bit irresponsible to give that kind of assertion with such little evidence. I mean, that's so tiny, minuscule evidence to say, like, oh, look, my Saudi Arabia thing, and they're moving into Saudi Arabia. It's just, I find that to be really, really, I can't believe it, honestly. But to my surprise, a lot of his fans are actually going against him on this one. Now, most of the top comments, like the top comments, first 5 to 10 are generally positive in some way towards Kyle. But as you start to go down further, Someone says, it's a very big channel, 1.43 million, Dr. Bo Hightower, I don't know who that is. It says, Rogan says the N-word at 1 hour and 16 minutes when quoting Kanye West lyrics. Rogan pulled the episode himself, Occam's Razor. Now, Occam's Razor, if you guys don't recall, is it is the logical rule or law, essentially, that whatever assertion uses the least amount of assumptions is the most right. Another person says Kyle Kulinski episode did have the N-word in it. Rogan quotes Kanye West. He says, Joe and Spotify worked together to decide what episodes were dropped, and even if the Saudi thing was the reason, couldn't they have blocked in certain areas? I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but the N-word was used in the episode, which is why it was pulled. Please correct this. And I think that Kyle, in the video clip that I showed you, actually says that there's no racial slurs used. So I could actually understand him potentially not remembering him using the word. It's like a 3+ maybe 4 hour podcast, so I'm sure that it's maybe hard to remember one singular word being used. And so, I'm not necessarily going to blame him for that, but he definitely should have done at least the most basic level research that I, for example, did yesterday on the situation. He didn't even do that. It's very basic level research. It was very easy to find that the N-word was actually in the episode. So this is something that he actually should correct, because he's actually wrong about that. And I think that he will correct this. I don't see how he doesn't, because it's just so it's so obvious, it's so clear, and it's obviously a very important thing to do. Another person says, so this video shows one of two things. Either Kyle did absolutely zero research before doing this segment, or he is blatantly lying about what happened. The reason the podcast was removed was because Joe said the N-word in it, not due to Kyle talking about the Saudis. This is an incredibly misleading video and really damages Kyle's credibility. So people already feel like Kyle's credibility is damaged because of his lack of criticisms of Joe Rogan. So people are already critical of that. I don't believe that he's blatantly lying. I don't believe that Kyle is ever blatantly lying about anything. I think that in this situation it is. He just didn't do. He maybe did like a tiny bit of research, because he kind of gave the caveat there of maybe it was them coming in unison or coming in concert to take down some episodes to lay off some pressure. So he did at least a little bit of research, but he definitely needed to do just a little bit more. It was very easy to piece together with just 5 to 10 minutes of research, I would say. And so, there's a bunch of other, comments here talking about how he's wrong about this. Some of the comments also saying that, this one says, Kyle, I know he's your friend. You get a lot of views by being on his podcast, but that Planet of the Apes was nothing but racist, and you neatly didn't talk about it. So I mentioned in my video that is the Planet of the Apes and the weird white brain, black body thing. Those were clearly racist. Whereas him using, for example, in this context, the Kanye West song FML, quoting that's not racist, right? He's just quoting a word that's not even racist, period, right? And so there's a big difference between those two, like the Planet of the Apes thing and the other thing, those were clearly racist, right? It was still from a long time ago, but, that actually was racist, And so there are a bunch of videos, comments, on here that is talking about, that's, what we can see. It says, dude, everything knows that he won't criticize Joe Rogan on this show because he's scared of losing subscribers. So there's a bunch of people who are calling him out on this stuff. And so a lot of people are sort of turning their backs on Kyle Kulinski on this situation. Understandably so, because again, he's not right here, and he did apparently not too much research on the situation to be able to just kind of piece together what happened, or what has been happening with this. So is he going to come out and issue a correction, because his conspiracy is just clearly unfounded? It's really disappointing that he would make that assertion with such little evidence, and seemingly such little thought. To the point where he didn't seem to even message Joe Rogan. Are they even friends? To where he didn't even really look anything up to see the Spotify message. I think this was recorded today, and the Spotify message came out last night. So, I had read the Spotify message by 9 or 10 p.m. last night. He recorded this today. So he's very outdated on his information. And this is kind of one of the reasons why Kyle is losing a lot of support amongst lefties. They feel like he's being too nice to Joe Rogan, and, his criticism of progressive politicians not being, being spineless kind of seems hypocritical when he's doing the same here. Although he does give some mild, tepid criticisms in the video. But, is he going to correct this? I don't know, but this is not a good look for Kyle, but it's also not the end of the world. But it's kind of becoming a snowball effect for Kyle.